Hey, with your evening story channel, I post new interesting stories every day. Subscribe and click the bell to not miss it. The sound of her son's bare feet came from the hallway. In a minute, Camille had it in her arms. My son, I was about to go and wake you up. I got up on my own, the boy said, and freed from his mother's embrace, immediately sat down at the table. And wash up, she smiled. All right, come on. Stephen looked regretfully at the sandwich in his plate and followed his mother to the bathroom. This morning was no different from the others, and Camille had no idea that very soon everything would change and would never be the same again. After breakfast, she helped her son dress and packed his backpack. But when she picked up the tiny sneakers, Stephen sighed heavily. The sole of the right one was starting to come off, and the other one didn't look any better. She should ask her boss for some money for her future paycheck today, she thought, looking in her purse to count what little she had left. Then tomorrow, with Stephen, we'll go to the market and buy new shoes. He needs a jacket, too. It's going to get cold soon. While she was thinking, she paid no attention to her son's suddenly bad mood. But when they left the entrance, Stephen stopped and looked longingly at his mother. Can I not go to daycare today? Why not? Camille wondered. He always liked it, and she wasn't used to him being cranky like all the other little children. In general, Stephen was a remarkably intelligent and well-developed child for his 3 years. He began to walk and talk early, and with his unchildish reasoning. Sometimes he stumped his mother. I don't know why, but I don't want to. Stephen shrugged and smiled so sadly that she crouched down in front of him and guiltily looked into his eyes. My darling son, can't stay home with you today, but I must. I have to come to work today. But tomorrow I have the day off, and you too. Do you want to go to the park and ride the swings for as long as you want? As long as you want. Or we could go to the zoo. Remember how funny the monkeys are. We'll buy them bananas and you can feed them. That's a deal. And tonight, when I pick you up from kindergarten, we'll go to our favorite cafe. I'll have vanilla ice cream. What kind of chocolate ice cream do you want? I like chocolate mom with nuts, and definitely with nuts. I'll give you chocolate ice cream with nuts. Now let's hurry to the bus stop or we'll be late for daycare. Aunt Emily will be mad at us. Stephen smiled strangely. All right, let's go. The teacher greeted them with a friendly smile. But when Stephen said goodbye to his mother and ran to the other children, she turned to Camille. Camille, the PTA has asked me to remind you about the monthly installment you missed again. And also, Stephen's spare shoes have fallen into disrepair and need to be replaced urgently. As to the sneakers he's wearing now, I noticed yesterday that they were torn. Camille looked for her son and looked at his blue sneakers with white inserts. Of course, they were from a cheap line. But she had expected him to wear them at least through the fall. And now it turned out that she had hoped for nothing. But what could she do? The prices for good children's clothes and shoes were exorbitant. Camille didn't have enough money for expensive things. She suppressed a heavy sigh. Well, Emily, I'll try to think of something about a contribution and a change of shoes for Stephen. Goodbye, goodbye. Tossed over her shoulder by the kindergarten teacher, who had already turned away to greet her with a sweet smile. Camille, the daughter of the local police chief, looked at her son again and waved to him. He waved back as well. When she turned away and walked away, he suddenly shrieked and rushed after her, Mommy, Mommy. Stephen, wait, where are you going? Emily tried to stop him, but he broke free and ran up to his mother and hugged her. What's wrong, baby? Camille held him tightly against her. Nothing, Mommy, he answered, and he sobbed strangely. I just wanted to tell you that I love you very much, and I love you. My little Camille's eyes burned with tears. I'm not little anymore, I'm big. Stephen smiled and kissed her cheek. Okay, Mommy, bye. He ran off to the boys again, and Camille hurried to the bus stop because she was already late for work. Still, a strange, uneasy feeling lingered for a while. Camille couldn't understand what was bothering her so much, so in the end, she scolded herself mentally. Yes, it's all right, don't get worked up. Why are you making up nonsense? It's better to calm down and get to work. The compulsion helped and the time until lunch passed pretty quickly. But when Camille's phone rang and she saw the incoming from the teacher, her heart dropped. Something had happened. Camille hurriedly spoke. "Emily, your son ran away from kindergarten. He didn't return to the group from his walk. We've searched everywhere. He's nowhere to be found." "What are you talking about?" Camille choked with horror. "How could he run away? He's only 3 years old. Where would he go? He knows I'm at work and no one's home. Emily, I'm begging you, please calm down and come over. I'm sure he can't have gotten far. We'll find him." Camille rushed to the head of the department and warned him what had happened. Then she called a cab and begged the driver to go as fast as possible. What the hell happened? He could not stand it when once again she began to hurry, tapping his palm on the dashboard. "My son disappeared from kindergarten." Through sobs, Camille said, "He's very young, 3 years old. He couldn't leave on his own. He's not like that, he's obedient. And the teacher said he ran away by himself. That's crazy." The elderly driver shook his head. "Just bear with me. I'm going to take a detour through the traffic." At the kindergarten, Camille was met not only by Emily, but also by the headmistress. "Please calm down," they began to say. "We've already informed the authorities. They're looking for Stephen and he will be here soon." But Camille did not listen to them. She and the other staff members searched every corner of the kindergarten, then ran outside. The police arrived and asked her to come with them to give a statement. But Camille suddenly screamed terribly and rushed into the lilac bushes that grew near the sidewalk. There lay her son's blue sneaker. Camille grabbed it and wept bitterly. She no longer doubted that Stephen had been kidnapped. The first night after Stephen's disappearance was the longest of Camille's life. All the search parties in the city were on their feet. Volunteers came to their aid. But the baby was nowhere to be found. Neighbor Evelyn, with whom Camille was friends, learned of the tragedy, determined not to leave her for a minute. Finally, after consulting her husband, she called an ambulance for the unfortunate mother. It was only after a sedative injection that Camille fell into a deep, troubled sleep. But waking up brought her no relief. Stephen was never found. The search continued for another week, but they were just as fruitless. Stephen's teacher was fired for negligence. They even tried to convict her, but then the case was dropped. It was the police chief who helped her, Emily, Evelyn said, and other parents have been collecting signatures in her defense. They say she'll be reinstated soon. Where's the justice in that? I don't care. Camille shook her head. All I want is to find my son, Evelyn. He's been gone for over a month. Where could he be? Who could have stolen him? Look, what if it's Christopher, your ex-husband? After all, he is his father. Did Camille put her hands over her face? No, Evelyn. The police checked right away. I didn't say that. You're the one who died 6 months ago. The coroner told me that. It's not like he didn't recognize Stephen as his. Thinking I was cheating on him, or so his mother told him. Jenna's never been nice to me since the first time we met. I told you. Evelyn nodded. She remembered the story and couldn't understand why her mother-in-law had disliked Camille so much. It was simple. Camille grinned bitterly. Christopher was a simple country boy, her only favorite son. Jenna had raised him without a husband. Loved him to bits, painted his whole life for him, found a bride from the same village. I think she's the daughter of the head of the collected farm. In general, in every sense, a promising girl in rural terms. And suddenly I showed up. Christopher was in the army and his unit was in our town. Once during his discharge, he came for a walk in the park, and I was there feeding the ducks on the pond. I always liked to do that, and I often went there. And he came up and laughed. I wish you'd come to my village. We have lots of ducks, too. I've never been to the village, I told him. Well, come to my place, he invited me. I hope your parents will let you. I told him that I have no parents, that I grew up in an orphanage. I've been living alone for 3 years now. Would you like to have me now, he asked. I smiled and nodded. I liked Christopher right away. We dated for 6 months before we became close. But from then on, we knew we loved each other and didn't want to break up. So we applied and we got married. We did it quietly, no weddings, no celebrations. We didn't need it. Camille sighed. And so it was that when Christopher came home from the army, I came home with him. Jenna was truly horrified when she saw me. She was waiting for her son to come home from the army and had a party of guests. She invited the very girl she used to think of as his fiancée. Christopher hadn't said anything to his mother about getting married. He wanted it to be a surprise. Yes, it was a surprise, Evelyn grinned. Yes, nodded Camille. I still remember Jenna yelling at Christopher and me when we told her I was an orphan and that we were already married. She even wanted to kick me out of the house, but Christopher took her into the next room and talked to her about something. So I stayed. We lived together for a month, but it was really hard. In the end, I couldn't stand her nagging and insults, packed all my things and left. I even wanted to file for divorce, but Christopher came to me. We lived together for 7 years, and all this time Jenna refused to consider me her daughter-in-law. She also methodically turned Christopher against me, calling me infertile. After all, we hadn't had children in a long time, and then I got pregnant and it was my fault again. Now my mother-in-law managed to convince her son that I'd gotten the baby somewhere. 2 months before the birth of Stephen, Christopher left me, and soon after the divorce married all the same girl who once waited for him from the army. That's the story, and that's how it came to be that Stephen is the only thing I have. Camille sobbed, and I can't find him. As the days went by, 1 week followed another. Summer ended, fall came, and Stephen was never found. All this time Camille had not lived. She hardly ate, laughed, and smiled, could not sleep. She aged 10 years, dark circles under her eyes. Forgotten cosmetics dusted in the nightstand instead of a hairstyle. Hair was tied in a simple ponytail. Camille went to work because she had to, but all her free time she wandered the streets hoping to find her missing son. She was now known to all the homeless and homeless people of the city because there was not a single place she did not visit in search of Stephen. Pictures of the boy were everywhere, and Camille diligently updated them, hoping that maybe someone would see him. Every week she went to the police station and heard only one thing: nothing is known yet. If anything happens, we'll let you know right away. So a year passed, but Camille ordered herself not to give up hope and kept looking for her son. Though even her closest friends despaired and tried to dissuade her from the futile search. Every day people go missing, and many are reported missing. They told her no one knows why this happens, but no one can find them, not even adults. Some lose their memory and some pretend to be lost on purpose. They change their place of residence, their appearance, and their name. Someone gets into trouble. But the little boy, where could he go? The baby is missing. Don't tell me about it, Camille asked. I know. I feel Stephen is alive, and I will find him, even if I have to walk the length of the earth. One day, Camille was visited by Evelyn. Look, she told her. I was talking to some people at work, and they told me about this healer who not only heals people, but she can tell the past. She also tells the future. Do you want me to give you the address if she'd tell you anything? I could even go with you. We're going now. Camille grabbed Evelyn's hand right away. You're crazy. She shook her head. Evelyn, it's 9 o'clock at night. Who's going to take you in? At this hour? I'll pick you up in the morning and we'll go. Okay, Camille sighed. Just please don't be late. The next morning, the two women drove to the address, which was written on a piece of notebook paper. Camille clutched it as if it were her last hope of finding her missing son. Even as she entered the healer's office, she still held it in her hand. Sit down, she was offered a seat by an old woman in a black shawl tied on her head in some strange, unusual way. You're looking for a child. How do you know? Camille jumped up. Don't jump. The woman waved her hand and I could read your look. It's obvious that you're not sick and you don't need a man. If the kid was sick, you'd bring him with you. But you're alone. So he's not with you somewhere, right? Yes, Camille nodded and cried bitterly. I've been looking for him for a year. It's no use. Yes, that's because you're looking for him in the wrong place, the woman said. Where should I look for him? Camille rose again. Look in your soul at the garbage you have accumulated there. Camille looked at the woman with widened eyes, not understanding what she was saying. Was she trying to make fun of her? Or maybe she was just crazy. Camille had come here for nothing. You don't get it, do you? The healer grinned and handed her a glass of liquid. Drink it. Don't be afraid. It's just water. Drink. Camille obediently drank and the woman nodded. It's good water from the well. Will it make you feel better now? Listen to me. You have not forgiven your father's husband, your child, but you must forgive him. Go and see him at the cemetery. Camille turned pale. How do you know he's gone? What difference does it make? That's not the point. Just listen to what I'm telling you. Now go and you'll be fine. Got it, Camille nodded, and put some bills on the table. You don't need this, the woman said. Take the money. You'll need it. It's a long trip, and if you want to thank me, leave your warm beads, they are good. And remember, the main thing is to be able to understand and forgive a great gift. But it is not given to everyone without saying a word. Camille took the beads off her neck and gave them to the woman. Then she went out and bowed to her for some reason. What did she say to you? Evelyn asked. She suggested that I go to Christopher's cemetery. Camille said thoughtfully and added, You know, she's a strange woman, and I'll go to Christopher's after all. And now Camille walked through the village cemetery, looking for the grave of her ex-husband. It was not an easy task, and she spent almost an hour before she found it. Then she put the flowers in a vase and lowered herself onto a bench, keeping her gaze fixed on Christopher's portrait. Well, Christopher had arrived. I began Camille's conversation with him. Not good. You and I got off on the wrong foot, but don't worry, I'm not mad at you. On the contrary, I'm very grateful to you for giving me a son. If you only knew how much he looks like you. I wish you to leave me then. Christopher, tears spurted from Camille's eyes. Stephen is missing. I wish I could find him. She sat with her arms folded across her chest for a long time, then looked up at the sky and begged God to help me find him. Help me. You know everything. Help me. Mommy, my mommy. A child's cry came from somewhere in the distance. Camille jumped up from the bench, looked around, and saw Stephen running toward her, arms outstretched. Camille screamed in a voice that was not her own and rushed to her son. She clasped him to her and covered him with kisses. She did not notice the elderly woman who came and stood silently beside her. Mommy, and Grandma and I came to see Daddy, Stephen said, continuing to hug her. Only now Camille looked up and saw Jenna in front of her. It was all Camille could manage to say. The old woman sobbed. I'm sorry, Camille. I'm sorry for everything. I wanted to call you or write to you many times, but I was afraid. I was afraid you'd take me away forever. Stephen, I've got it. When Christopher broke up with you, he wasn't happy for a day. Wendy never became a good wife to him. Christopher loved you and couldn't forget you. He started drinking. I talked to him 100 times, begging him to pull himself together, but he just kept sinking lower and lower. Wendy started walking out on him, and she left him. That's when I decided to come and talk to you. I wanted to ask you to forgive Christopher. That's when I saw Stephen for the first time and realized what I'd done. Stephen Nuno, the little version of my son. I couldn't come to you that day. I didn't have the strength. And then there was that trouble with Christopher, burying him. I was dying every day myself. Camille, I don't know what came over me, but I decided to take the baby away from you. I went to the daycare center, called him up, told him I was his grandmother, and took him away with me. Oh my God, Camille repeated. For a whole year. Do you know what I've been through in that time? How could you do this to me? I was going to come to you, Jenna, because you, Stephen, are all I have left in my life. Camille took her son in her arms and walked away, without a word to her former mother-in-law. 2 weeks passed after Jenna met Camille. She became ill and felt worse and worse every day. She didn't even get up to get a drink of water and couldn't hear someone quietly making the door. Suddenly someone touched Jenna. "Are you asleep?" The old woman turned and saw Camille and Stephen in front of her. "My darlings." The old woman cried. "My darlings are here, Grandma's here," smiled Stephen. "Mommy said that we'll take you with us now and we'll all live together. You agree?" Oh, grandchild Jenna could not find more words and just cried with happiness. To be able to understand and forgive loved ones, it's a great gift. We're family. Camille smiled at her, and that means we're going to be okay. We will, Jenna told her and gave her and her grandson a big hug.